for the Deputy Lord Mayor, Mr. Clyde Bevan.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the City of Perth March 2024 agenda briefing session. I'd formally like to declare the session open at 5 o'clock. I respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation of Western Australia, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. It is a privilege to be standing on Whadjuk Noongar country. Acting CEO, would you please recite the prayer?
Almighty God, under whose providence we hold responsibility for this city, grant us wisdom to understand its present needs, foresight to anticipate its future growth, and grace to serve our fellow citizens with integrity and selfless devotion. And to thee be all blessing and glory forever. Amen.
Thank you. Please note that in accordance with the Council Policy 1.4, this meeting is being live streamed and the recording will be made available on the City's website following the meeting. Attendances and apologies and leaves of absence. Moving on to item 3, attendance. In attendance today we have Councillor Raj Doshi, Councillor Brent Fleeton, Councillor Liam Gobbett, Councillor David Goncalves and Councillor Catherine Leeser. The Lord Mayor Basil Zemplis, the Chief Executive Officer Michelle Reynolds and Councillors Victor Coe and Bruce Reynolds are apologies this evening. In addition, I welcome the Acting Chief Executive Officer, the other officers and any members of the public and media here in attendance. There are no elected members currently on approved leave of absence, and I will remind councillors to please submit any applications for leave of absence prior to next week's ordinary council meeting. Item 4, announcements by the Lord Mayor. There are no announcements. Moving to item 5 on the agenda, disclosures of interest. Acting CEO, do we have any disclosures of interest?
Yes, Deputy Lord Mayor, the following interests have been disclosed. Councillor Catherine Leeser has disclosed an impartiality interest in item 12.2 as she is a councillor on the Heritage Council of WA. The Deputy Lord Mayor has disclosed an impartiality interest in item 16.2 as the church group were his landlords. And Councillor Liam Gobbett has disclosed an impartiality interest in item 12.2 as 69 to 75, 77 to 85, 87 to 93 and 95 to 99 Barrack Street were the subject of a development application he determined. He briefly discussed the Liberty Theatre proposal with Mr. Humich prior to DA's submission.
Are there any other interests from the floor? Item 6.1. We now move to item 6.1, public questions. Public question time will be held at the ordinary council meeting next week. Item 6.2, deputations. Acting CEO, are there any deputations?
Yes, Deputy Lord Mayor, one deputation has been received in relation to item 11.2, 39 and 39A, lots 52 and 53 Mount Street, West Perth, proposed change of use from two single houses, residential to short-term accommodation, special residential, including associated works, DA 2023/5162.
Thank you, Acting CEO. Please be reminded there is a 5-minute limit to deputations. I will now invite Alan Stewart from Lateral Planning, Brodie Edmonston, representing Expanded Equity Group, accompanied by Louise Thompson, Leo Chong, and Quinn Lee, who are speaking for the recommendation, item 11.2. Would you please come forward?
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Good evening, councillors. My name's Alan Stewart, Director of Lateral Planning. Just speaking in favour of the development on behalf of the applicant for item 11.2. Look, mainly just to let you know, we've worked closely with the city's administration over the last few months to make sure this proposal addresses the key issues raised. As mentioned by the Deputy Lord Mayor, the proposal is to undertake alterations to two existing dwellings at 39 and 39A Mount Street for use as a small-scale boutique short-term accommodation premises. It's not a hotel, it won't have a liquor licence, it's short-term accommodation. We've amended the plans over the last few months to reduce the number of accommodation units from 19 down to 13, which brings the development much closer to the bedroom capacity of the two existing dwellings on the property at the moment, which is 10 bedrooms. We also amended the plans to introduce more visual and acoustic screening just at ground level where the main entry is to the building. Brodie will speak to you shortly, but we've also made some further amendments to the operational management plan at the request of the City Administration to deal with certain things like check-in times, meet and greet services, and information for guests relating to parking, access and public transport. And our operator has extensive experience managing short-term accommodation facilities. Look, in terms of land use, I think it's important just to emphasise that the area is not exclusively for residential purposes, despite being a residential scheme use area. Various other compatible non-residential uses can be approved at your discretion. And in our view, a small-scale short-term accommodation premises is entirely compatible with the character and amenity of the Mount Street locality, which, as you know, already has some non-residential uses in the form of short stay and a small restaurant cafe. This accommodation is within a very short walk of the central business district, and it's really geared up to attract business travellers coming over to Perth who might be looking for a self-contained place to stay for a few days while doing business in the city. So in terms of car parking, very few guests will be travelling by car. We expect the majority of guests will arrive here by taxi, Uber, and probably the operator chauffeur service, and also walking to the premises after perhaps working in the city for the day. At the time of making an online booking, guests will be advised that no car parking is available, and that in itself will discourage guests, I think, who do have a car from staying at this particular premises. Guests will be advised and prior to check-in that there's limited parking available, that there's parking restrictions in the area, and they'll be advised of the available nearby public car parking facilities. And as you probably know, there's quite a few. Within 500 metres of this site, there's 3,000 public car parking bays off-street. So we think demand for car parking will be very low, and it will not generate high levels of traffic. As the agenda item states, there is no parking requirement here. It's under the Perth parking policy. There's only a maximum cap that we can provide. We're not providing car parking for guests, but we do have 2 on-site car bays for staff and contractors like cleaners and that type of thing. And I think that's quite important because they're the ones who need a car. Paragraph 35 of the agenda item in itself suggests there's no tenant parking provided, but I just want to emphasise that point. We do have 2 on-site car bays for staff and contractors. So in conclusion, we've addressed all of the relevant planning considerations to ensure the premises can operate in a way that will not detract from the amenity and character of the locality. We're very supportive of the staff recommendation. We don't have a problem with the various conditions that have been recommended, and we look forward to your support next week. Thank you. And Brodie's just going to speak briefly about the operational side of things. Thank you.
Good evening, Deputy Lord Mayor and council members. My name's Brodie. I'm the licensee and director of Expanded Equity Group. I'm fully versed in managing short-term accommodation, have been for the past 6 years across Perth. Our management company has a solid track record throughout all the premises we manage across Perth. We haven't had any issues or adverse reports from local councils or residents with regards to any of the facilities we manage, and make sure that we always possess the best management plan to operate. As a management company, it's important that our accommodation is managed to a high level to maintain the streetscape appearance in pristine condition. So part of our job as the managers is to make sure that the entire facility is maintained, and that there's no impact on the local area or neighbouring properties. With regards to our guests, at the time of reservations, we don't take any instant bookings. All of our guests are extensively vetted before being provided any details on the accommodation. We take photo ID from all our guests and get them to sign rental terms and conditions adhering to the Code of Conduct. In addition to the pre-arrival security measure, you'll see in the operational management plan that we implement additional measures such as utilising minute sensors. So these are technology devices that we place within each room of the premises, and that monitors guest behaviour, including noise, occupancy through number of devices connected to Wi-Fi, and also motion. So that allows us to be notified. So within 10 minutes, if there's any breach of the noise levels, we're notified within 10 minutes and we're on site.
Excuse me, your 5 minutes is up.
Oh, okay.
And I would like to ask the councillors, do they have any questions in relation to this deputation? Councillor Brent Fleeton.
Thanks, Deputy Lord Mayor. I just have a question to ask because it might impact a disclosure I may need to make. I wasn't aware of your business involvement in here. I was reading the agenda and saw the owners. Are you a member of ASTRA, the Short-Term Rental Association, at all? Okay. Just for the meeting's benefit, my firm's done a lot of work with STRA on the East Coast. They're not clients at the moment, but I've got a lot of knowledge in this. Can I just ask some questions now? No disclosure needed. So what these were two houses before with multiple tenants or owners before. What was the situation before this DA came in?
It's two existing dwellings that have been built on the property.
Yeah. Was anyone in them before or are they brand new?
They were built, when were they built? How old are the dwellings? Quinn's the landowner, if you want.
The construction was finished at the end of 2017.
Right.
And so 2018, our families start to move in. Currently, we occupied in one side and the other side just casually live there, in case we have the families or friends come over to stay. Yeah. And before the construction, the original DA was actually approved for 20 service apartment in 2013. But we changed the mind to build the two luxury single residential building, but now we think because the whole area has the huge demand for the boutique and luxury level of accommodation. By looking at the opposite residence and service apartments like the Mouse River Hotel and what is the Mouse Way, the Holiday House. They're all very outdated for the current demand of the market because those buildings has been 50, 60 years old and then the design is totally different. And the architect we use is Barry Bettino. He's actually now, one of the very sought after developers and builder architect in the town. He just orders the finishing from 35, 37 to 39, even up to the number 2 Bellevue Terrace in Kings Park. It's all his design with all very high-end finish. And that's why we want to bring the different the accommodation solution to the city to encouraging people to stay a bit longer in the city.
Sure. I might cut you off there because that was a very long answer to a very, very minute question, but another very good deputation. If I can continue, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Certainly.
I live on Malcolm Street, so I don't have a declaration to make because it's not immediately adjacent, so I might have to make that as an impartial, as you've detailed a number of properties that I walk past on the daily. So these are questions of mine, they're just concerns which I'm trying to get through my head. When I read the agenda, I thought this might have been an owner of the property living in there or living in part of the building and another part of it was the short-term rental. But I'm reading here reception area, I'm reading here drop-off, I'm reading here you've got a manager. To me, it just is sounding like a hotel and you're not subjected to the same stringent applications that we would there. So if you've got any commentary on that, because you're not the owner, you're the manager, you're the planning consultant and the owner, it's quite a complex operation, much more so than I was reading.
I'm happy to answer that question, Councillor. Look, it's not a hotel under the way that term's defined in the planning scheme. A hotel is the subject of a liquor licence, so it's not that. It's a small-scale, short-term accommodation, so self-contained short-term apartments. It's not what you referred to as what's called hosted accommodation, where the occupier rents some rooms out. And as you're probably aware, the state government's announced some reforms in that area. And very soon hosted accommodation won't even require planning approval if it comes through the way it's been announced by the government. So it's what you would call unhosted short-term accommodation, but to make sure it operates in an appropriate way, as all these places do, they engage a professional management company like Brody's, and there is staff on site. There's a meet and greet service, as you call it, for check-in, check-out, so during the day. So it's not hosted, but there's staff on there. It's not just people left to their own devices 24/7.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks.
Councillor Raj Doshi, you have a question.
Through the chair, thank you. So I just have a couple of questions. First one being, I know that you said you've got all these measures in place in terms of noise levels, with other people obviously residing in and around that vicinity. If the noise levels are inappropriate, so for example, especially during big events in the city, if you've got one person booking it, but yet then a group of 12 turn up, stag and hen do's, that type of thing. How will those kind of be managed just to help the residents in and around that vicinity with the change of what it will be, what it will look like? And my second question is, how will you actually be advertising these spaces? Will they be on websites like Airbnb and things like that, or how will that work?
Yeah, so it'll be a mix with regards to the advertiser. We'll be a mix between the OTA booking platforms, booking.com, Airbnb, Agoda, direct bookings, and with regards to crowds drawing, obviously with part of our pre-vetting, like, we ask all the questions, we get IDs, we ensure that the occupancies are only those that are supposed to be attending the property. If we become aware that there is any more and they breach, they're immediately evicted without question. So we attend site, we remove them from site.
I was going to say, we also have a minimum number of nights that have to be booked to stay there. So you're not just going to get someone booking for one night for a party. And there's no communal areas either. They're individual self-contained rooms. So it's not like you could have people, 10 people, and there's a communal swimming pool or something. It's not that sort of built form, that sort of structure. So they're very much individual.
So we essentially restrict our minimum number of nights. So we actually we won't do one night bookings at all. It's minimum 2 days during the week and 3 days over a weekend. And we do that for the purpose of ensuring that people aren't just hiring it out for the weekend to go and party or do anything in the city.
Can I add something, please? Yeah, and also when he's talking about the booking, besides all this commercial, the booking websites, we're actually targeting to providing some corporate, the business, the accommodation service for the surrounding buildings, the west side and BHP, they're all pretty much a few hundred meters away. So that's another targeting group. So it can really minimize all the impact for the local community. And regarding the noise, besides all this because this is two freestanding building. What I'm saying is they are not 13 rooms in one building. Actually, one side is 6 rooms, the other side is 7 rooms. That is the purely individual walls and everything. So the impact of the noise original from start, it can be quite minimized. Yeah. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? No. Thank you for your deputation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Items 7 to 10 will be dealt with during the ordinary council meeting next week. We now move to reports. As we move through the reports, I'll ask councillors if they have any questions in relation to those items. The first one, 11.1, Planning Economic Development Alliance Report, Corporate Carbon Accounting. Sorry, Councillor Fleet.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Deputy Lord Mayor, question on page 8 of the agenda talks about the emissions inventory for 22-23. Does this list, do we expect this to change as the city grows and we service more residents? Is this sort of based on our current workload now and this will get bigger in future?
Acting CEO.
Thank you, dear Deputy Lord Mayor. If I could direct that question to the General Manager, Planning and Economic Development.
Through you, Deputy Lord Mayor, this, I guess, is a baseline that we work from, but it's not going to be entirely static. So we will need to review it on occasion. For instance, as the Western Power lighting starts getting transferred across to us, it'll affect the baseline. So unless we increase our services, you're right, as we get more and more people in the city, if we increase our level of service, then our baseline will increase. But it's measured against this baseline, if that makes sense. So this is the baseline. As we introduce more services and more people, we will shift against the baseline and report against it, but there'll be explanatory text as to why that's happened.
So follow up, please, Deputy Lord Mayor. So throughout the rest of the agenda, it's talking about developing this net zero plan, and this is the baseline that you'll be working off. What's the type of resourcing the city's putting towards this overall? Is there any budget that you've got in mind that you're going to give us for 24-25, or are there any figures that you might be able to provide for next week? I appreciate you're not going to be able to do it on the fly now. It's just there's a report here which states, here's the baseline, we need to do all this, so how are you going to resource it?
Through you, Acting CEO.
General Manager, if you can respond.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Deputy Lord Mayor. We have, as you know, an in-house team that manages projects and delivers some directly. We are going through our internal project prioritisation process at the moment, and those next steps listed in the report are priorities that are being put forward for consideration for funding next year.
Final question. Thanks, Deputy Lord Mayor. So there's nothing funded now. This is looking forward for next financial year. Is that right, for your actions?
Acting CEO.
General Manager.
Through you, Deputy Lord Mayor, we're already taking actions to address our emissions through a range of initiatives, photovoltaics, EV charging, but so it's not like we're waiting, but in terms of the plan, and particularly in terms of resolving our metering issue, which is a bit of a headache for the General Manager Commercial Services at the minute, those will be actions that will be subject to funding, but it doesn't mean we're waiting until then.
Just for context, I mean, the recommendation that we'll vote on next week is we're just endorsing this inventory. Great. To do, like, what's the plan? That's what we need to
Acting
see.
CEO.
So, that's just for next week. Yeah.
That's a statement. Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions, please? No, thank you, GM. We'll move on to item 11.2, 39 to 39A, lots 52 and 53, Mount Street, West Perth. Proposed change of use from 2 single houses, residential, to short-term accommodation, special residential, including associated works. DA-2023/5162. Do we have any questions, please? Yeah, Councillor Brent Fleeton.
Thanks, Deputy Lord Mayor. So just a question on the special residential class. Can the city give an example potentially of where the whole building is used for that purpose?
Acting CEO.
Through to the General Manager, Economic Development, and any subsequent questions through to the General Manager. Thank you.
Well done.
Through you, Deputy Lord Mayor, there are a number of properties in the city that are used exclusively for short-term residential. We can provide some examples in the information that comes out to elected members.
Through the GM, you heard my questions, and I think the concerns that people have more broadly. Not everyone in the public who will be interested in this item is going to read the agenda paper and the answers. Could the GM potentially give some answers or some commentary that's in this agenda as to this short-term versus residential conflict?
Through you, Deputy Lord Mayor, I guess the issue of short-term accommodation in areas where it coexists with residential, I guess, is an ongoing issue for everybody, actually, the operators and the regulators. I guess from the city's perspective, it can be managed if it is tightly managed. The unregulated nature of making authorities aware that these places exist is more the issue than the ones that we are aware of. So the ones that we approve, we're able to control through measures that we place on development approvals and so on. It's really the ones that we don't know about, and there's probably a lot, and that's throughout the metropolitan area, that cause more headaches than the ones that we know about.
Just to follow up, so with all the consultation on waste and parking and those type of things, the city and your compliance team, it's a bit like the Rua situation. You're saying that if we approve this with the conditions and the plans, we can manage it better through our own resourcing. Is that correct?
Through you, Deputy Lord Mayor, yes. When we have these conditions, it gives us the powers under the Planning and Development Act to take action as appropriate when there are non-compliance versus not having the approval in place.
We had a question with notice from Councillor Catherine Leeser. Are you satisfied with your answer?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Are there any further questions? No. We'll move on to item 12, Community Development Alliance Reports. 12.1, Events Plan 2024/25. Are there any questions, please? None? We'll move on. Thank you. Item 12.2, Review of Policy 2.11, Heritage Rate Concession and Heritage Adaptive Reuse Scheme, Grant Scheme. We have interest from Councillor Catherine Leeser, impartiality, Councillor Liam Gobbett, impartiality. Do we have any questions? Councillor Brent Fleet.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. So this was deferred from the last OCM to next. Forgive me if I've missed it in the agenda, but is there any benefit to the deferral? Have you changed anything, or what are we going to do now?
Through you, Acting CEO.
Can I pass that question on to the General Manager, Community Development, and any follow-up questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Through the Deputy Lord Mayor, this item is as stands the same as the previous council meeting. There was additional information provided through a CIBN. Thank you.
Just to clarify, so the wording of it's exactly the same as the previous. Yep.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No further questions? All right, we'll move on. Item 13, Infrastructure and Operations Alliance Reports. There are none. Item 14, Commercial Services Alliance Reports, Parking Fee Increase. Do we have some questions on notice from Councillor Catherine Leeser. Are you happy with your answers?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
And we have questions on notice from Councillor Brent Fleeton. Are you happy with your answers?
I wouldn't say happy. I'm just happy to ask a couple more just to expand, if that's all right, Deputy Lord Mayor.
With pleasure.
So the increase in costs that the Alliance is talking about, just a little bit more detail. It's obviously going into the Perth parking levy, but I would like some more information, please, on what other costs are going up.
Through you, Acting CEO.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. If I can pass on to the General Manager, Commercial Services, to respond and any further follow-ups. Thank you.
Through the Deputy Lord Mayor. Look, there's a range of costs, but it's about $1.7 million across the board, but there are probably 60 or 70 line items that make up those costs. But primarily it's things like labour, security costs, annual increases to vendor contracts, so they are typically CPI related, so they're non-controllable costs, materials, repairs and maintenance, so we have a full team that are out there consistently on the streets and in our car parks repairing parking equipment and internal cost allocations. So I suppose that's something that the CFO resolves every year. So there's an internal cost allocation for right across the city.
Thank you. A follow-up, just in the structure of next week's debate with this motion as it reads, agree to amend, how are we going to be able to have a debate on just the free initiatives in terms of night parking and weekends and have that, and then potentially the other increases to handle what you're talking about there?
Through the CEO, Acting CEO, thank you.
If I can ask the General Manager to respond.
Through the Deputy Lord Mayor, if I've understood you correct, I suppose the two components to this, there's one which is the all parking excluding the free parking. So that's obviously one proposition, and the other proposition is to introduce a fee for nighttime parking. So I think they can be resolved separately.
Are there any further questions?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. So the incentive or the increase to try and get as many people to sign up to the app as possible, could you just give some commentary there around the benefits to the city ratepayers and look, everyone in general, the way I see it, just some commentary around if we get everyone onto this app, what does that do for costs longer term?
Through you, Acting CEO.
Back to the General Manager. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the Deputy Lord Mayor. Okay, well, I can give you a bit of context, I suppose, to date, what's happened. So we've got a 40% uptake on the app usage. Now, that's occurred since July, so a rapid take-up, and I think that's primarily because people like that it's frictionless, it's touchless, and it provides a great convenience. Now, we based our numbers on about a 50% uptake over sort of 9 years, and I expect that we're going to exceed that. But our business case then, it rationalises the number of on-street machines from 761 to 385. There's a considerable saving that comes with that. Also, we are moving from some in-sourced to outsourced as part of that project, and we estimate that in itself will deliver about $6.5 to $8 million in cost savings for the city. Now, beyond that, there are further gains. So if we see a greater uptake in the app, that enables us to remove more on-street equipment, which is delivering more and more savings. And as I say, this is just this initiative in isolation. The next stage of it will be our off-street car parks. So all of that equipment will get replaced as well, and we'll see further cost savings and rationalisation.
And last question, Deputy Lord Mayor. So we can have that debate next week in increasing the fees to make it the 11% potentially, but we can also keep the free parking campaigns. Is that correct? Is that an option?
Through you, Acting CEO.
General Manager.
Yeah, that would be my understanding there. I suppose they are separate issues in a way. So I think we've sort of delivered out what would happen if we keep the free parking and only deliver the proposed price increases. But I think there's some further gains than if we do start to bring back the fee for night parking.
Yeah. So I just want to be really clear here because you've skewed it at the end. What I want to see is the wording of the motion that we could potentially discuss is keep everything as is the same with 6 p.m. after and then 3 hours on the weekends. That's and then what you're talking about here with the other fees to be able to do those things you're talking about. So the way I read the recommendation now, it doesn't, as to me, split it out like that.
Yeah, through you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Yeah, we'll ensure that wording then is correct to enable that to occur.
Are there any further questions? Thank you, GM. We move on to item 15, Corporate Services Reports. 15.1, Monthly Financial Statements, January 2024. Are there any questions, please? None. We'll move on. Item 15.2, Schedule of Accounts, January 2024. Are there any questions, please? No. We'll move on. Item 16, Chief Executive Officer's Reports. 16.1, Proposed Council Policy, New and Innovative Events Activation. Are there any questions? Councillor Brent Fleeton.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. So once this policy, I don't know who's going to take it if the CEO is not here, so it might need to be on notice, which is fine. So excited about this one. I just like the policy's there, but in the paper it's saying if council supports this, the proposed policy support, it'll meet a key deliverable in the corporate business plan. I think it needs to be a bit more than that. Can we see what this marketing campaign is going to be to support it and what the mechanism will be? So how does a stakeholder contact the city? How does it then come to us? What item is it put? Is it a briefing session? Is it an EMES? And then, so I think some training around our role in this as well. So I take all of that on notice. I just get frustrated when I see, the policy's done and drafted, you've supported it, finished. Well, if it's not usable to stakeholders that we've been talking to for years about this, then there's no point to it.
Through you, Acting CEO.
We will indeed take that question on notice. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Raj Doshi.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. So it might be actually quite similar to Councillor Fleeton's, but will elected members, with this new policy change, will elected members get an update on the projects that have sort of come through, what was provided and what the outcome was of that particular event, and if it was any benefit to obviously the ratepayer and the city?
Through you, Acting CEO.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. We'll take that on notice too. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Thank you. We'll move on. Item 16.2, Cathedral Square placemaking proposal. Do we have any questions on that one? Okay. Due to this is noted earlier as a behind closed doors for this item, I would ask that we. Sorry. We have a confidential attachment to it. We'd ask that we now go behind closed doors, and so we'd ask the gallery to please leave, and also please cease the live stream. Thank you. Item 20. This item is to be dealt with the ordinary council meeting, urgent business. There no further business. I now declare the agenda briefing session closed at 5:37. Thank you.
Please all rise for the Deputy Lord Mayor, Mr Clive Bevan. Thank you.
Good job, Alan.
Thank you. Don't you ask any questions? Wait for you to ask some questions.